Hi, guys. Welcome back to the Sustainability Podcast, where we are bringing conversations on sustainable living. Very excited to have Mwangi from Kijani Supplies today. And I will not take too much time. I'll allow him to get into it, introduce himself, let us know what he does. Karibu sana, Mwangi.
Thank you very much. So my name is Mwangi Muriuki. I'm the co-founder CEO at Kijani Supplies. Just a bit about myself. I've been an entrepreneur now for the last 10 years. It's been an interesting journey. I was in manufacturing before I came into Kijani Supplies. So I'll just talk about Kijani Supplies. So Kijani Supplies essentially is a consolidator for the tourism industry, safari lodges and hotels, specifically in the Masai Mara. The vision is to one day move out of the Mara and to get into other tourist-rich ecosystems like Amboseli in the north. Kijani Supplies is 1 year old now, so still based out of the Mara.
Okay. So you've used a big word, consolidator. What is that? Like, are there other categories? Because it seems like it's a niche thing. So who's a consolidator? Or
So
what
to
is?
break it down, right, you have thousands of lodges across Kenya and East Africa. Every single lodge, essentially, before Kijani Supplies had to come into Nairobi to purchase every category of goods that they consume in serving tourists. So energy, the entire spectrum of food, dry goods, fresh produce, meats, and so on. So everyone comes to Nairobi to purchase, and then they basically transport back across hundreds of kilometers. So we basically thought, look, why can't we just base ourselves in these ecosystems and have lodges transit, 50 kilometers, 100 kilometers, rather than 300 kilometers into Nairobi? And I know we'll get into it later, but just from an ESG, impact, around climate, and you already have significant impact if those lodges are not coming into Nairobi, rather they're just operating within their sort of ecosystem.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So as a consolidator, that's a word for it. So how do you choose those? Is it from your client's perspective, the demand? So from the fresh produce. So is it one from their demand? How do you identify your suppliers? I'm assuming. Is there like a criteria you have? Is it a level of certification you're looking for? Could you maybe get into that?
So, of course, it's an entire process. I'm just going back a little bit in terms of how Kijani was born and sort of how it came to solve this problem. So, Kijani Supplies was born through a sort of venture studio process where we basically ideate problems in tourism and try and now, once you have the problem, you figure the gaps and then you try and build a solution. So, one of the gaps we identified was safari lodges really struggle with procurement because of distance, because of quality, because of cost. So that's how we identified there was a problem. So now, in terms of filling the gap, there's a problem in terms of, so not a problem, but once we had Kijani Supplies, you have to now start onboarding suppliers and building processes around bringing them on board. And of course, Kijani was sort of, was born as sort of a sustainable sort of business in terms of how we want to help lodges operate. So our suppliers, in terms of onboarding and requirements, yes, they do have to have a sort of sustainable chain in terms of how they produce their goods, whether it's the supply chain, the value chain around how they end up with a final product for us to purchase and then resupply to lodges and hotels.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for the lodges that you work with, how did you get into? How did they find you, or did you find them, or could you just get into how you got your clients?
Absolutely. So Kijani Supplies is born in Nairobi, but of course the mission was in the Mara. And the reason we chose the Mara was because it has the highest concentration of safari lodges in Kenya. So we set up initially a small presence in a town called Talek inside the Masai Mara. And you were basically carrying, initially when we started, we were just carrying maybe one category of goods. You have your marketing brochures. You have one person who is doing sales, and they would basically go up to the camps, sell the vision, because at the point it was really a vision we were selling. Sell the vision. You have your first client, and part of it is understanding their pain points. Yes, we are trying to supply you with a whole range of products, but is that in fact a product? So it was basically proofing the ideation process we'd undergone. And over time, yes, there was a problem. And then you get into now specifics of what kind of products they need, whether it's by brand, whether it's from a quality perspective. So one lodge, two lodges became 10, 10 lodges became 50. We are now at 90 lodges. We're currently serving 90 lodges inside the Masai Mara. And the goal is to actually saturate the Mara, hopefully get up to about 250 lodges currently in the Mara.
So so the Mara has 250 or thereabout?
Roughly, yeah. I mean, some are temporary; they come on during the high season, but we've mapped out about 250 lodges.
Okay, wow, 90 is quite high.
Yeah.
So, well done to you and your team.
We are working hard, and we keep working hard to get to that 250 mark.
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe a bit more about maybe the social side of it. So being a consolidator, you are creating employment, but also they could be, I guess, sort of also bring in a lot of employment on the social side from the other businesses. If they had truck drivers coming down, also the issues.
Absolutely.
So maybe could you speak into your kind of impact in terms of, you said Talek?
Talek, yes.
Yes, Talek. In
yes.
Talek, how many people do you employ? How many are locals? Yeah, just the social side of your business. Yeah.
Okay. So I'll just give some perspective. So we see ourselves, the word we use is sort of regenerative tourism, okay? Where we see that we need to sort of renew the environment and we need to renew sort of the practices that lodges have and so on, and the relationships they have with the environment, right? So first thing, of course, we came up with a policy and the vision in terms of sort of sustainable tourism and the supply chain around tourism. And part of the goals we had was, you have climate where we want to sort of become carbon neutral by 2027. We sort of want to carry a portfolio of goods that is green and sustainable. Right now, I think we're at about 30%. Our goal for 2025 is about 50%. And part of that now you come into governance where we sort of, we're looking at the local sort of impact we can have. Part of it is, yes, jobs, local job creation, providing a sort of a window into this market for local supply chains, sort of education around the environment, sort of impacting youth, women, and sort of marginalized groups. So that informs our sort of policy around social impact. Yeah.
Okay. Just getting a bit, again, really very impressive and how you've thought it out. But getting into the, again, back to the social side of your business and your suppliers and how you source them. So do you have a percentage or what guides you in, bringing a client back to the Mara? If you're bringing a particular product, when you're doing your listing, do you have, like a 30% that has to be either done by women and by women or youth? Is that guided by anything, or it's just not, again, just a quality issue or quantity and sustainability of the production?
Right now, so if you go into that sort of ecosystem, Talek, it's a small town, and you sort of find, there's no structure around who does what and who supplies what, and so at the end of the day, we see it as, all right, we are in this region. We are opening up the doors for women to supply fresh produce. We're opening the doors to youth-led sort of groups. But over time, we do want to put in structures around, whether it's putting quotas or percentages around who is supplying what. But ultimately, what drives us is, one, the vision, and two is the presence we have and the impact it's having. And culturally, you'll find a lot of times the women and the youth are the ones who are sort of trading rather than men who are more taking care of the herds or the cows and so on. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how well do you work with, have you seen a sense of responsibility by the lodges that you work with in maybe supporting these similar communities and sourcing from them through your office? Or is that an opportunity that people could tap into?
So there's many things happening. So a few months ago when we had the floods, so we had been building sort of what you call a sort of robust, resilient supply chain. But, sometimes what does that really mean? Until it's tested. Okay. So flooding comes and basically, like Talek, for example, was completely marooned. Okay. Nobody could get in, nobody could get out. So we had to basically switch our supply chain into a sort of a humanitarian sort of corridor and we basically tried to pull in partners to contribute food items across the range, and a lot of people came on board, whether it's on the lodge side or whether it's our supplier side of our business. And we managed to ship out quite a few tons of food items, blankets, and so on, up to the villages and the people who are stranded. And, so I think people are willing to help if they understand the impact they can have. And if they understand that that is part of sort of regenerative tourism. We are all in this space. And for this space to exist in 10, 15 years, we all have to sort of do something, whether it's helping the communities, whether it's impacting the environment directly. The practices they have to change something about how they operate. So, Kijani Supplies, we've come in and we've found this, just so many things, lodges, communities, and so on. And we're just trying to sort of understand and piece together a story and influence lodges into sort of
Just
also
shared
understanding.
responsibility.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's a good word. Yeah.
All right.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's lovely. So there's also, I guess, more room for more structured ways of engaging communities, again, for a more sustainable, ecosystem in the Mara.
There's
That's
a
what I'm
lot
hearing.
of room. There's and again, the Mara for us is a test case. There's a lot of room in the north, in the east. When you talk about the Amboseli and Savo, there's just a lot of space to structure how to impact communities and how to sort of share responsibility.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So maybe could you briefly get into what I guess how you use I'm sure you use tech. I'm not sure they're sending smoke signals or anything. So is there integration of tech in your system? How has that been helpful I think from the ideation process, first of all? How has tech helped Kijani get to where it is now? And then just the role it plays within your business.
All right. So from the ideation process, tech was a big component of what the business was going to be. When we started the business and sort of now set up on the ground, we realized lodges were really not. Tech out there is a great story, but for them, they wanted to prove that can you actually supply us with the goods we want when we need them on time, quality standard, and so on. So now that's the brick and mortar of a business. Okay. So we really had to now build our supply chain. We needed to sort of become extremely reliable in our service and quality before now we could start having conversations around tech. All right. So once we sort of proved that, yes, we can do this, we have a presence, we are not just here for a couple of months, then we started mapping out the tech aspect of the business. What it can be, what it should be. And again, using the lodges, a curious thing, out of 90 lodges, probably you'll find probably 3 or 4 have a functioning tech sort of platform where they sort of put in orders. Everybody else sends orders written on paper, on WhatsApp. So there is a huge opportunity to sort of bring tech in. So we have mapped out what the tech is now. And sort of there are 2 parts to it. The first part is sort of a tool where lodges can place orders. They can track their purchasing history, invoicing, and just your typical sort of purchasing type app, application, or web-based tool. Then the other side is basically now we are looking at how we can sort of become a partner for lodges in terms of education around sustainability, because that's a huge gap. It's one thing to assume people know, but people don't know, and people don't know how, and so that's one area, a lot of education. The second area is sort of building a platform that can help these lodges sort of chart a path towards eco certification. Again, they don't know there are eco certifications out there. They don't know that these certifications can actually help market them internationally and so on. So that's another aspect of what this tech will be. So we've mapped it out, and we'll now be going into development over the next few months.
Okay.
But that's what it sort of looks like.
Is it they don't know, or is it not like demand driven? Let's say consumers don't really care. Like for me, if I'm going to an holiday, I'm going to go and find the most, oh, it's cheap. We're using the word affordable nowadays. Most affordable lodge that will give me my Instagram pictures to look good. And I don't think okay, I maybe because I'm more aware, I'd look more into the website and look at it, but it's not something that we're known to do. So is it because consumers are not demanding of these things, that's why there's no investments by the lodges themselves, or is it generally that it doesn't make business sense yet for them? Because a large sustainability is expensive. We keep saying this on this platform. It's getting those certifications, getting those audits done. It's quite pricey. So yeah, so is it a consumer issue? Should we be demanding more before I go to a lodge and ask, how do you get rid of your waste? Is it, how much of it falls on the consumer? Yeah, basically, that's what I'm trying to get at.
I mean, it's a curious question, very curious question. So I would see it in three parts. I'd sort of look at it from a stakeholder perspective, right? You have consumer, you have government, and you have now the lodges, which I'll call the market, okay? I think ultimately the market will always conform to what the consumer wants. They'll always find a way to make it cheaper, more affordable. They will always find a way. If there's profit to be made, the market will always find a way to conform, right? If you look at the consumer, maybe they're the biggest problem, I'm not sure. And again, being the problem, there's a whole background to it. Where do they come from? What education do they have around sustainability? Do they know? Okay. Who's responsible for them knowing? Is it themselves? Who is, right? But I really believe in any industry, I think the consumer sort of has a lot of influence around products in the market. And at the same time, the consumer has a lot of power or influence over government policy. All right. But again, it's stakeholders. It's not one piece, moves every other piece. I don't have the answer to it, but I think there's many questions we can ask around those three stakeholders and how they're managing themselves and sort of,
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, because I think whenever I go to whenever I've traveled and there's that sign, the sign that says, don't for towel use. Like if you don't put it down, if you just use it once.
Yeah.
But you find because you're not not in your house. In your house, you lose the towel for a couple of days. But because you're in a hotel, you want it washed every single day.
Yes.
So I feel like, again, you're back to it. It's more of consumer awareness and education on exactly why this is important. Not just for, there's the effort of putting up the signage and explaining it. But it's a longer discussion that this, I guess, the sector needs to have. And, if you have, if you're a frequent traveler, learn to educate yourself. And, there's so many eco lodges, like you're saying, that exist. And I think if the markets see people demanding more of these practices, they will actually align themselves. And also, I guess, more opportunities for companies like Kijani.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, what we do, we profile lodges. When we onboard a lodge, we'll profile it. Is it an eco lodge? Is it a sort of low budget camp? Is it a mid-tier luxury and so on? And well, not necessarily sadly, but, you probably find 70%, 80% fall sort of, low budget, mid-tier. All right. So that means for them, it's a profit play. We cannot afford to get into, sustainable costs, right? And also the sort of tourists or the visitors who are coming into these spaces, they're also budget conscious, So yes, they want to see the wonder of the Mara, but they're budget conscious, So if a majority of tourists coming in, whether local or international, are budget conscious, what does that mean, The flip side of it, from if you talk about now government policy, I think government also has a lot of influence in and especially longer term vision for what sustainability can be and should be nationally. But again, we know that government has a problem with implementation. The policies are there, the studies are there, but they sit on a shelf. And then the other thing you find is implementation is tied to sort of political interest. Is there interest now? Is there interest later? Is there interest in not doing anything right now? So everyone has a role to play. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So maybe the last thing I'd want to get into is one, just a few tips you can give people who are in the hospitality space, either you're traveling, you're a consumer, or you run the business. So start off from a consumer. You, when you're traveling, what are you looking for if you go to the Mara? What are you looking for in the lodge that is more sustainable or would influence your decision? And then we can go into now to the business side.
So sadly, I think, sustainability is an ideology, it's a philosophy somebody carries. So if it's an ideology or a philosophy, the question is, where do you get it from?
That's deep already. The statement itself feels like a philosophical
Is it?
statement. Like you're about to go into it.
Yeah. So where do you get it from? Did your parents tell you do not litter? Did they take you to the parks? Did you learn it in school? Which we are not doing in school, by the way. So that's the first question. And that basically informs what we are doing every day in terms of the environment and sustainability and all that stuff, So personally for me, I lived abroad and it's a national ideology, the environment, So that's what I carry, What I would advise anyone is, look at the history of Kenya, for example, Wangari Maathai, the Green Belt movement, there's such a deep and rich history around people who've tried to sort of fight the system and create change, Educate yourself. There's so many stories, so many people who are trying to do. I was watching something you guys did on, there's this guy who was doing the seed balls.
Yeah.
There's amazing stories out there, But sadly, it's personal driven, Maybe somebody would rather pick up this book and that book or watch this and so. And that's where, again, I think government comes in. What programs are in schools? Because I think sustainability is generational, If kids are learning from the first class they go into something about sustainability, the environment, and visiting parks and seeing animals, and it's constant and continuous over the years, I think you have a generation of sort of allies to the environment. If the government is not mandating that we are doing that in schools, because that is where you catch a generation. It's not, if they're not doing it, then it becomes a sort of individual, sort of my parent, my friend, my group, and those things still matter, but yeah.
Okay. All right. Thanks for that. And I agree. I think the ideology of it should start from as young as possible. Like, we were talking about this earlier. Like when you see someone throwing, a bottle outside a moving vehicle, either you're in a matatu, either you're in your 4x4, I think the person next to them should really just react immediately and, let them know that's wrong. Like, there should be a fine for that, but like you should
Absolutely,
just, like, shuka gari, like get out of your car and pick up your trash. So I think even just, again, back to individuals and how they operate. If you see anything happening that is wrong, even in a lodge, if you're in the Mara and you're seeing someone throw a plastic bottle out, that should be, don't be like, that's not my problem, that's the government's problem. It should be you speaking up about it. Yeah,
Absolutely.
like you're saying,
And
should
just
be
when you
a
talked
sense
about
of ownership.
moving the needle, right?
Yeah.
Yes, I mean when you go to these lodges, ask, and when people get enough questions around the waste, around sort of, discharge of sort of, water and all these questions, and it becomes everybody wants to know, then the lodge, they have to change.
Yeah. Correct. Ask.
Ask.
Everybody ask questions.
Yeah.
Okay. So the final one would be on very briefly on the hospitality side. Like, what's your final word to the industry? What needs to be done? Who needs to do it? Yeah, where do you move from here? Because I think Kijani can only do so much. But yeah, so what's like the bigger picture that needs to be done in the space?
So I think that's a very big question. I'll just try and answer a bit of it. I think we are getting to the point where the environment will force us to change how we live. And we are seeing it, okay? We are seeing longer rains. We are seeing flooding. We are seeing wildfires out there. We're just seeing so many things that we've not seen before. And it's really tied to how we've treated the environment for so many years, right?
She's angry.
Yeah.
She's mad.
She's mad. So I think people need to see it in that way. At a more personal level, maybe think about what will our kids inherit? Okay? Or maybe think about, as we get older, do you want to have trees in your backyard? Do you want to have a Masai Mara? I think we just need to ask ourselves, what do we want? This, the whole Gen Z movement and so on, for me, I really see it as a demand for the soul of the country. What do we want?
Accountability.
And everyone needs to just ask themselves, like, what do we want? Whether it's from a personal perspective, from a business, government. And then when we all answer that question, if we agree we want the same thing, then let's be accountable, let's be responsible. And if we say that if we can't agree that we want the same things, then,
So they should stop. What I'm getting from that is they should stop operating from a checkbox system and really look at, one, I think investing properly in this, like what we're talking about. It's not a one-off thing. You can't sign off and say we've done, we're no longer using this particular product. That's not enough. It's larger. It's a larger discussion. Absolutely. They need to also demand more from the government. I think if you're paying taxes as a business, you need to ask also the right questions on how they're helping you with your waste management and all that. Yeah. All right. Yeah, that's about it from our end. So I don't own a lodge in Mara. But if you do have some discount codes that you have in Kijani and you want to share with us at the podcast here, we're happy to take some. But you could let us know, look at that camera and let us know how we can reach you in case we want to, I don't know, understand more about the business model, either invest in it or, just also source from you maybe if I do have a lodge. Okay. Yeah. All right.
So, Kijani Supplies, we have a small office in Nairobi. So we basically do our purchasing consolidation here. But our base of operations is deep inside the Masai Mara in a town called Talek. Right now there's such a buzz around Kijani Supplies. If you go to Talek and you say you want to buy, Kijani Supplies will sort of come up. You can reach us at info@kijanisupplies.com. Our website is kijanisupplies.com as well. You can just go and take a look at the Kijani story and sort of the products and categories we offer. Visit us anytime in the Mara and see what we're doing. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us on this amazing conversation. As usual, I learned so much from our guests. And now my body is suddenly craving a bush holiday. All right, guys. Thanks for joining in. As usual, follow us, subscribe. All the info is on the description box. See you next time. Bye.
Bye-bye.